It's not unusual for Ayn Rand to get offended when he logs into China's social networks. The writer is keenly aware of the growing Islamophobia wave spreading through the country, including a so-called anti-halal movement whose supporters accuse Muslims of dividing the country. They're calling on airlines and universities to stop serving halal food, dishes prepared according to Muslim law. China's internet censors have nothing against these kinds of messages.
The goal of this movement is to clamp down on Muslims and to limit their rights as part of a minority.
None of the members of the anti-halal movement we contacted were willing to speak on camera. But one, who calls himself the Association of Pork Eaters, agreed to answer a few questions in an online chat. He said Islam in China is on the rise and that Chinese majority culture is under threat. But he wouldn't provide examples to back his claim. Muslims make up less than 2% of China's population. Ayn Rand, whose real name is Cui Haoxin, belongs to the Hui minority, a Mandarin-speaking group of Muslims whose mosques are often built in typical Chinese style. For centuries, Ayn Rand's birthplace Jinan in eastern China has been the home of a substantial Muslim community. The government's strict rules controlling religious practice are apparent in the mosque's courtyard. The head of this congregation says he supports state policy.
Religion should serve society first and foremost. It should be managed in harmony with our social system. That's the right way.
Even though daily life in Jinan's Muslim quarter looks like business as usual, state-backed pressure on Chinese Muslims is mounting. A new 5-year plan calls for stiffer control over mosques. In a few provinces, some of them have been closed and restaurants were forced to remove any signs in Arabic script. The government points to the police state in the western region of Xinjiang as a perfect example of religious control. But in reality, that's where hundreds of thousands of ethnic Muslim Uyghurs are being detained in re-education camps, according to human rights groups. Our camera team was stopped by guards when we approached one of them, and we were held for hours. Ayn Rand is one of few Chinese intellectuals who have openly criticized the state's persecution of the Uyghurs. This has led to police questioning him for 2 days. He says he is afraid, but refuses to remain silent.
Once you speak the truth, and the Communist Party takes offense at you, they will certainly take their revenge at some point. Shutting up will not protect you.
Ayn Rand fears the worst for Chinese Muslims may be yet to come.
Let's get some analysis on that story now with China analyst Mareike Olberg from the think tank Marex here in Berlin. Mareike, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, let's talk about the increasing Islamophobia that we saw featured in that report from our correspondent. Do you think it's safe to say that Muslims have something to fear in China?
I would love to say on the one hand, yes, and on the other hand, no. But I think at this point, it is safe to say that an increasing number of Muslims are seeing their lives disrupted in China. I mean, on the one hand, you have the societal initiatives that the report talked about, but the more important thing really is the overall climate that's being created by the CCP, by the Communist Party of China itself, with its own initiatives. It had its own anti-halal movement where it encouraged officials not to eat in halal restaurants. It's coming out with a plan for syncretizing Islam, which it does for other religions as well. And last but not least, there's the big elephant in the room, which is the mass internment of Uyghurs and other minorities in so-called re-education camps.
I want to ask you about those camps in a moment, but first, how do you think attitudes towards Muslims have changed under President Xi Jinping?
I mean, there have always been certain tensions, both at the popular level and also the government has never quite said that, you know, it's fine to fully embrace your religion, and you don't have to. This is all you can do. But it's gotten a little more extreme under Xi Jinping, to want to rein in religion and to want to make sure that they're not in conflict with the governing ideology.
Leading up to a million Muslim Uyghurs being interned in camps, as we said. What do you think Beijing is actually hoping to achieve with this method?
I mean, they're officially representing this as like de-radicalization. In some cases, might even frame it as part of the anti-terror campaign. The thing that's happening here is basically what the CCP is trying to do is eradicate any kind of belief system that could be in conflict to its own ideology. So this is targeting something that they feel is threatening their grip on power. And that's why they've been doing this so radically.
Isn't it fair to say from the Chinese government's perspective that they do want to tackle extremism? There has been violence linked to extremist separatist groups in the past?
There has been, and I think to some extent there is that problem, but I mean the way that the reports coming from those camps is something, and even if you just look at Chinese media itself, something that could be considered radical, just like having a beard, wearing a veil, refusing to drink alcohol, refusing to eat pork. So if that's your definition of radical, then that clearly goes beyond just fighting terrorism.
This is a serious issue. We're talking about Islamophobia growing in China. Why do you think there's been so little response from Western countries, for example?
It's very hard to say, and I don't really want to speculate. I think there is a mixture of reasons. One is their countries are busy with other issues. The other thing is China has been really good at diffusing and preventing criticism of its own human rights records in recent years. It's gotten a lot better at that. So it's really a mixture of things. Countries not wanting to offend China, perhaps also maybe not enough people standing up to demand countries to step up.
So what would be the best response from the West?
Point it out, criticize it, demand that independent observers be sent in. There are a range of issues that could be done. Sanction those officials that are involved in this, possibly sanctioning companies that are known to be involved in setting up the security apparatus in Xinjiang. There are a range of responses that could be considered and should be pursued seriously.
All right, taking a tougher line there then on China. Marika Olberg from the think tank Merex here in Berlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.